Hi, I'm Gabby. Welcome to the final episode of 2023 of the Happier Life Project, brought to you by the award-winning free mental health and wellness app, My Possible Self. For our Ask the Expert Christmas episode, our guest is Dr. Claire Plumbly, a clinical psychologist specialising in trauma, anxiety and burnout. Alongside her online therapy practice, Dr. Claire creates engaging short-form videos on improving your mental health on social media. And she runs regular online workshops for overcoming stress, procrastination, and unhealthy boundaries. Dr. Claire is also currently writing a book on how to recover from burnout, so we'll definitely be bringing her back sometime next year too. But because I really get into it from the start with Dr. Claire talking about Christmas and how it can not always be the best time of year for our mental health, I think we should just get straight into it. Ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Claire, to the Happier Life Project. This is our second Ask the Expert episode, and this is purely dedicated to listeners and app users' questions and problems, and it gives you guys the opportunity to put anything to our experts, and I am merely asking your questions on the podcast today, and they are all themed around Christmas. Now, we know that Christmas is supposed to be a time of good cheer, relaxation and celebration, but for many, Christmas is the opposite. It can be stressful, depressing, lonely. Many people are unhappy at Christmas, and according to the National Institute of Health, they can experience mental health problems. Dr. Claire, you are a clinical psychologist and director of Good Therapy Limited. I wondered, before we get into everybody's questions, what you had observed over this Christmas period. Do you find that your patients that already come and see you struggle more? Do you find that you get an increase in people wanting to get some help from you and your team?
Actually, so what I tend to find with the referrals being made to us is they slow down a little bit at this point. I think there's a lot of emphasis on people kind of thinking Christmas is ahead, and actually taking the time to look at themselves and what support they need kind of goes out the window a little bit. And then what I noticed literally last year on Christmas Day, we had 3 inquiries that popped in to the inbox. So they kind of take off from around Christmas Day onwards, when I think that's when everybody is suddenly, you know, in all those situations that can be quite overstimulating or triggering their back with family members who might set off old, you know, patterns of relating and, you know, having to negotiate, sorting out the children with ex-partners. And there's so much there that can be really hard for us to navigate. And suddenly people go, hang on a minute, I need to get this sorted for next Christmas. So let's get booked in now. So yeah, that's the trend that I've noticed in my practice the last couple of years.
Right. Are you a fan of Christmas yourself?
I do like Christmas. Yeah. I think my favorite bit is the anticipation, but when it's kind of paced and not too much.
I know what you mean. I personally really enjoy the build up to Christmas, but I don't know what it is from Christmas Day onwards. I kind of feel a bit hollow. It's very anticlimactic for me, at least. Anyway, I think we should get into our listeners' questions. Okay, here's the first one. Please, can you share some advice on how to deal with unpredictable family members, especially when they drink and you don't know how they will react?
Yeah, that's really hard, isn't it? Drink is hard, and unpredictability is hard. Although I suppose at least you have a sense that they might be unpredictable. So some predictability in that which you can maybe work with.
Good point.
In terms of that, I would take some time to think about what your boundaries are and how you might choose to react if they start to behave in a way that doesn't feel good. So what will you tolerate, and what will you feel like, actually, I don't need to do anything about that. I'm happy. That's within my tolerance levels. But setting aside a little bit of time to do that before you're in these kind of family gatherings might be just a good investment, because then you can plan what you'll do. So will you remove yourself from the situation, or perhaps politely decline to engage in certain conversations, because you can think ahead, well, what tends to be a bit of a trigger for this person? Is there anything where they might, get more unpredictable about any topics or kind of games? And maybe just do that if it's, suitable and appropriate in conversation with any other family members who, might feel the same, because you might be able to seek allies around planning of the events that you're getting together where this person can behave in a way like that.
I really relate to this person, especially the drinking part, and that unpredictability just gets heightened, doesn't it? Anything can set them off if they've been drinking a lot.
Yeah, and then you kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells. It's so unpleasant, isn't it? And so that takes me on to maybe managing your own nervous system. So finding ways that you can pace yourself in these situations so that you can take yourself away and calm yourself, so that you can be able to be as kind of clear-headed or non-responsive to the things, so that you feel like you're managing it in the way that best suits the situation, what you need. So that might be taking yourself out and having a walk, or confiding in a friend, or just going into the kitchen next door. And like, all of this is really important, and maybe just think about planning it in. And if you're going to someone's house, you might even say to them, is there somewhere, when I'm feeling a bit like I need a break, that I can go and sit and just be quiet for 5 minutes?
Yeah, good advice there. Okay, the next one is about Christmas gifting. I really struggle with Christmas gifting. Why do I feel the need to compete with my ex-wife?
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it? I think split Christmases is tricky, and it's really natural to feel this kind of sense of competition around gift giving, around significant occasions like birthdays and Christmas. And if you think about what's at the heart of that, it is around your bond with your children, and wanting them to feel loved and valued by you. And your ex-wife will be feeling the same. So, maybe just think about what is the biggest motivation for that competitiveness. Is there also a fear, for example, that you might be seen as less caring or less generous than her? Or do you worry that your kids prefer spending more time with her? If you can just, this could be a question to journal on, like, what is at the root of this competitiveness, because then you can try and deal with that more constructively for yourself, rather than just kind of, it's great that you're pausing and thinking, this is a pattern I get into. You obviously don't like it in yourself, but being competitive is a natural part of humans. We can't help having that in us. It's there for a reason, to help motivate us towards things that are important for us. So we can't get rid of competitiveness, but we can just be conscious of our motivations for it, and pause when we notice that pull in that direction. And your ex-wife probably does feel the same. So if you are in a place where you can have these amicable conversations, could you maybe chat to her and agree a budget, and ensure that you're not trying to unintentionally outdo each other? Maybe just have that kind of honest conversation, that you notice this, urge to try and get a certain level of present, and does she feel the same? And can you kind of unite in showing your kids that you're together on the same page? And that would be lovely for the kids as well, to not feel this tussle, because they might be able to pick up on that as well.
Yeah. Something that I'm working on this year is trying to not feel like I have to financially match the same value present of whatever somebody is getting me, because I've just had loads of outgoings this year, and I know further down the line into January, that's really going to get me into trouble if I do.
Yeah, totally. You're thinking about future you, which is what I like. It's not just about being reactive to the current situation, and you're being kind of aware of that pressure, internal pressure that you're putting on yourself.
Exactly. Okay, next one. I find it hard at Christmas because I miss more than ever familiars. I think that might mean family members who have passed away. I don't think there is anything I can do to feel better about this.
I mean, that's so hard. So I just want to say how sorry I am for your loss, first of all. And this festive season does intensify those feelings of grief, because we really long for those people who are no longer with us. And that longing and loss the science shows us that the networks in our brain that light up around the pain of that is the same as if we'd been physically hurt. So it's such a strong physiological feeling. So it's really natural and valid to miss them and to long for them. Well, there isn't a quick fix for the pain of that, but we can try and find ways to honor those feelings alongside ways of making the most of the Christmas period. So, first of all, maybe just allow yourself some space to grieve and to be okay with the fact that you're going to miss them. It is natural part of the healing process, and there are going to be these anniversaries, that you have to go through, the first time and then afterwards. And it's harder if you put a pressure on yourself to have a brave face the whole time. It's possible to have two emotions or more than two emotions at one point, and throughout the day you can cycle through them quite quickly. So if you start to feel sad, it doesn't mean the whole day is going to be a sad day. You might have a sad moment where grief bubbles up, and then the next moment might bring something new. So just notice how your emotions move through you, and also that you can have the two at once. So you can in a moment miss someone and feel sad they're not here, and you can notice what you do have, that you're here with this other person who does fill you up. But I think it's a bizarre concept for us to think we can have two at once, but we can. In terms of a practical thing, you might want to have some sort of special tribute to the person who's gone, maybe lighting a candle or playing their favorite maybe Christmas carol or something like that, or sharing a story, because there's a strong idea in our culture that once someone's died, that we say goodbye and we move on. And actually there's a lot of research shows that when we find a way to honor them and hold their stories alive, that can continue to bring us joy and connection to them, and makes it it gives us permission to feel like we can enjoy Christmas as well, rather because we're not forgetting them.
Wow, I didn't know that or think about it that way. That's really lovely. I guess people would think it's too painful to go down that route, but I really like the idea of flipping it.
And it might be painful, but like I say, it can be both. And I feel like I'm honouring, and it is painful, but it is also special to me and meaningful, and that's important.
Hi, Dr. Claire. I saw that you specialise in burnout. All I want to do over Christmas is rest, as I have a really stressful job and work long hours. But my partner has made all of these plans for our days off. I don't want to disappoint, but I'm so tired I feel like crying. His job is not as intense. I don't want to let him down and spoil Christmas for him, but I'm finding it hard to bring up, as I'm too tired to get into what will probably turn into an argument. What do you advise?
So what I like here is that someone has really identified what their needs are, which is really hard in this day and age. We do tend to, it's very easy for people to put other people's needs first and burn out further because of that. So just hats off to you for recognising that you're tired and that you need to use the Christmas period to rest and recuperate, because, that's not easy. But this feels like a question about boundaries and how to communicate these. Giving yourself permission to communicate your wishes is really important. So when you communicate what you want clearly, it means that you're less likely to get a build-up of frustration and anger around not having your needs met. And that will bubble up in other ways where you might become passive-aggressive. So, for example, if I've gone on day trips that I don't want to go on, I might huff and puff or sigh, or like almost not enjoy it or get into it as much. So that's me kind of showing I didn't really want to come. And so that's the risk, is that you become grumpy or flippant and sarcastic and things like this. So it is a better investment to try and find wording that allows you to clearly say, actually, so thank him. So appreciate all the effort he's gone into this, because he obviously really cares for you and your relationship, and it's lovely. And I'm sure that's something at the back of your mind as well. So I'd definitely start with that as a place of appreciation for his efforts of, setting this day aside and planning it. And then also just saying, and the thing is, I do need to use some of this annual leave to rest. What you've just said to me, I'm so tired I could cry. That is a feeling that a lot of people have a sense of at some point in their life. So, how can we pace ourselves? Could we do a day on, day off? How else can he get his needs met? Maybe giving him permission to think about days out with other people in his life as well. And that's something that you you wholeheartedly kind of support, so that he's not trying to get all his needs met just in this one relationship with you, because that sometimes can happen in relationships as well.
More great advice, and I hope that helps. Okay, next one. Hi, what techniques can I use for social anxiety and calming down? I still haven't gone Christmas shopping, for example, because I can't bring myself to go to the shops at the weekend. And I'm dreading New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I mean, everywhere is just so busy and stimulating at the moment. The shops are noisier, there's music pumping, it's harder to find parking. And then I don't know what's happening on New Year's Eve that you're dreading, but I'm assuming it's some sort of gathering. So again, a lot of value in investing a bit of planning ahead time, because then maybe you can do practical things around, like going when it's quieter, when the shops first open, or planning a New Year's Eve that is better suited to what you need right now, maybe something a bit smaller. But using calming techniques before, during and after any kind of social visits can really support your nervous system in the moment. So these are things that really you need to practice in advance of being in a situation when you are triggered. Deep belly breathing, box breathing, all of these types of breathing exercises where you're finding a slow, soothing breathing rhythm has an instant impact on your physiology, slowing your heart rate down, and that brings calm. It's hard to slip into that when you're already anxious if you haven't practiced. That's why I'm suggesting you practice. And I like doing, because I am an EMDR therapist, and use tapping, bilateral tapping. I've got some on my social media where I introduce slow tapping, which can be really supportive to the nervous system as well. So people can take a look at that. But the final technique that you could try, which is quite a nice one, and I do this in therapy with people, is before a trip out or a party, is to visualize how that might pan out. So you can start from the beginning all the way through to the end where you're home safe and sound again. So maybe picture where you're going to go, where you might sit for your cup of tea mid-shop, where you're going to park, and try just bringing to mind gently the problems that you're worried about coming up, so that you can then picture yourself how you would handle them. And you can even add that in as a coping statement. I can handle this, and imagine what you'll do. So you're kind of creating the answers. And often this kind of exercise supports people to go, actually, I do have that in me, because we're very disconnected when we're anxious to our coping abilities. So this just reconnects us to that.
Gosh, these questions are all so relatable. And on with the next one. I suffer from depression, and I really struggle with pretending to be in a good mood and keeping up the festive charade. Last year, I was called out for withdrawing and not being around. I thought that was better than bringing others down. And I'm not good at faking it. But Christmas just makes me feel worse about my life. What do you suggest?
So, yeah, first of all, I'm sorry that you're struggling with your mental health, and, that it is hard at Christmas. There's so much pressure to be a certain way. That can just ramp up that self-monitoring of how I'm coming across, which again then leads us to feel worse about ourselves because we might have a certain expectation. Is there someone, who you like to spend Christmas with, that you could just and feel like you have a trusting relationship with, who you can confide in about all of this? Maybe you could talk to them about the fact that you are struggling with your mental health and how you would benefit from being in any social situation, so that they've got some context to the withdrawal, and they understand that's actually helping you to turn up in a certain way, that you're turning up at all, for example. So, maybe it is just being part of the gathering for a short period and then taking yourself off and tending to your nervous system. And I think people, if they understand what's going on, sometimes they can be a bit more compassionate.
Yeah, I'm just looking at another question that came in that's very, very similar. How can I deal with the pressure of feeling happy all the time with friends, family members, at work, with my flatmates, when life stresses and worries carry on? So they're not saying they have depression, but they're definitely feeling under a lot of pressure to, I guess, put on a performance of being happy and merry and jolly and all the things we associate with Christmas, at the detriment to their own mental health.
Yeah, I mean it's similar really, isn't it? That all emotions are valid. It's really hard when we feel we should be behaving in a certain way, like to give space to all the different emotions. But what all the psychology research and books show us is that the more we push against those feelings rather than listening to what they're trying to tell us, the more they bounce up and bother us further. So what are your feelings? What is it about the stress? There's something there that you need to tend to. So maybe taking some time to journal on it or talk through with a friend all the things that's going on with you, a trusted friend, and that might give you some contextualizing. I often find that in therapy when someone comes in very upset or stressed and they're minimizing what's going on for themselves, and actually when we talk about everything that's going on, they can see actually there's this thing at work and this maybe an argument with this friend that's been rumbling on, and my kids are tricky at the moment, and actually once they can see that bigger picture, they're able to be much more compassionate towards their own feelings. But yeah, I think again it's doing that and then pacing yourself and just choosing when you want to try and go out and be part of the Christmas fun and when you need time for yourself and giving yourself permission to take that time.
Yeah, sit and watch Elf.
Yeah, love Elf.
Yeah, me too. Or another one. I'm going to share this with you, Dr. Claire, because I read it in an article. I thought it was quite interesting. There's the relative lack of privacy that comes from having your house full of people, which is a known cause of stress. I hadn't even looked at it like that, because sometimes you just think, what, these are all people that I'm fond of. Like, why am I not excited or whatever? But maybe there is that, like, just a load of people being in your space or you being in somebody else's space, maybe.
Totally. Yeah, no, I can see that. It's really tricky, isn't it? And then if you're hosting as well, there's a feeling of I need to, as soon as I almost walk out my bedroom, I need to have my game face on and put other people's needs first. So it's lack of privacy and then, lack of emotional space and boundaries. Like it feels like that all kind of is harder to maintain.
Yeah. Okay, the next one that was sent in is just one line. Not finding sense in Christmas. What's the point?
Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if you've always felt like this, or if this is a feeling just, right now this year. So, I mean, if it is a more recent feeling, then maybe this could be a sign that there's something more going on, that you're feeling a bit low or tired or burnt out or just overstimulated by it all, because there's such a long lead in and there's so much, stuff thrown at us, expectations on social media and, on advertising and people trying to get us to go do the secret Santa in the office and Christmas meals. It's a lot. So it might just be your nervous system and body saying, actually, this is too much. I just need a break. So, maybe take a bit of time to listen to that. If this is a feeling you get every Christmas, then I guess it's an opportunity to just work out what your ideas and values are around Christmas and how Christmas could better match those. Because, maybe it is less about gifts and all of this kind of hype around getting the perfect gift for people. Maybe it is more about just, one thing with one person, spending some time with them. So maybe what would help you connect to what's important at this time of year. And maybe Christmas has got nothing to do with it. Maybe it's, nice walks in the cold, or I don't know, taking time to rest when work stops and everybody's off work for that, Christmas week. Like, just maybe think not just about Christmas, but just about this winter time and what your nervous system body needs when it's kind of cold outside. I'm assuming you're in Britain and it's cold. Don't know how wide your listenership goes.
No, it's pretty wide.
Oh, is it?
But I guess our majority are from the UK. Okay, the next one. Hi, please can you ask the expert, how can I overcome my fear around food over the Christmas period? I have a big family and all we do is go to each other's houses and eat and drink. I can't seem to stop myself with all the sweet treats, but then I feel so guilty and uncomfortable afterwards. It doesn't seem worth it.
it's tricky, isn't it? Because, you know, most of us have a bit of a love-hate relationship with food. We're built to crave the kind of and really enjoy and find, you know, motivating to eat those high energy foods that's on tap during Christmas. But then we're kind of holding it back of our mind, oh, I need to maintain a certain shape and weight and look a certain way and don't want to look greedy and all of that. So it is a time that's, you know, tricky for lots of people because of that weighing up and dynamic. I don't know what it's like for you, Gabby, but my family and my husband's family have very different attitudes towards food during the Christmas periods. And my family sounds similar to this person's, in that we have chocolates and sweets in bowls out and around, and nuts and everything, like everywhere. My husband's family aren't so much like that. So it was interesting the first time I went and had Christmas there, because even though I was, you know, this sense of anticipation, there's going to be lots of food and I need to, you know, try and only eat 5 chocolates or something like this, I'd have these little rules, and then there was nothing out. I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of was just interested that it felt less Christmassy to me without everything out. But anyway, I'm not answering the question yet. So what I would say is that the important thing is to just bring compassion to this feeling, because we are in a tricky place where we're being told different things, like be festive and eat, and like be mindful of, you know, the new year kind of coming, and actually, you know, food is a really lovely way of celebrating with people, and sometimes we lose sight of that. It is a way of coming together. And so can we just enjoy this festive period and let go of expectations around what we should and shouldn't be doing for this? It's really not a long time, you know, it's really not a long period where we can just go with the flow a little bit, and maybe are there ways to do that so that you can be more comfortable? Maybe, you know, this person said they feel uncomfortable, you know, could they just wear slightly looser fitting clothes, and can you just hold in mind that, you know, maybe it is okay to put a bit of weight on over Christmas? You know, that almost feels blasphemous to say, but actually, you know, it's okay. So yeah, show compassion to yourself that you are in this place. And I think what a lot of the research shows about food is the more we try and restrict and the tighter the rules we have, the more it is that we crave those foods. Whereas if we try and just allow ourselves to eat in front of other people, that can be tricky for many people, and just go with what's on offer, we can not crave those things so much. That's certainly the case for people who find themselves binge eating. I'm sure this person, like a lot of people, has some sort of routine around food, and that is really hard to maintain when you're at other people's houses. You can't have the same rules. So just go with the flow a little bit, but, you know, see what is within your control, because if there are days when you are at home, you can kind of think about, well, how can I manage those days where I'm feeling more comfortable again, and try and just maybe balance it a little bit that way.
Like that. Okay. Can you offer any suggestions for how to get through the financial pressures of Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, it is really tricky, isn't it? There's a cost of living crisis, and many people are in the position of having less disposable income for presents. So this is like a question about financial boundaries. There's, again, like I've said, there's so much pressure to buy things, and I find every year that seems to increase. So, you know, not only was there a secret Santa at work, but now my daughter's coming home, she's in year 8, and saying, oh, my class is doing a secret Santa, you need to buy me something. And so I had to say, look, we can't keep saying yes to these things. So having to teach my daughter financial boundaries as well, which will help me. So, you know, take some time again to work out what your budget is. I think a lot of people aren't always that aware of what's coming in and out. So it is just a useful exercise, like how much is in the bank? How much will I have in January? What is realistic that's not going to make future me uncomfortable? Because, you know, there's lots of options to buy now, pay later, but is that what you really want for, you know, yourself in 6 months' time to be paying things then? You know, just let the people know who need to know what your boundaries are. There's a really good book, I've talked about boundaries a lot today, but Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. Can I just like drop that in? Because I think if anybody wants to kind of deep dive into boundaries, that's a really good book to go and take time to read. But yeah, she gives ideas about what you can say to people, because a lot of people I find just don't have the wording for boundaries, and they can feel like they're being too assertive or almost aggressive if they put a boundary in place. But what we know is that mental health, and you're less likely to burn out if you're kind of doing these regularly. So yeah, just let whoever needs to know that this year you won't be buying presents, or you'll be doing like a £5 limit. There is a lot out there that says you can do making gifts and gift your time. Yes, you can, but hold in mind that that's still quite a big thing to be offering. Crafting. I think I said gifting. Crafting is expensive and takes a lot of time and energy. And, if you're already feeling squeezed financially, that might not be something you want to add to your plate. So just be careful about those things, I'd say. They are really lovely, but don't feel like you have to offer something. You can just say, this year I won't be gifting. And if they choose to give you a gift, that is up to them. You will maybe feel a little bit of guilt that you haven't, but you can manage your guilt. It doesn't mean that your guilt is telling you then need to rush out and buy a gift. The guilt is there, but you can just ride that guilt out because you've set the boundary and you've already dealt with it.
Gosh, yeah, that's really resonated. And you've just reminded me that there's a family member I need to message and be like, is it okay if we don't get each other Christmas presents this year because I'm already quite stretched?
Yeah.
That's definitely a light bulb moment for me. Financial boundaries. I guess I wouldn't or haven't thought about it that way before, but you could apply that to outside of Christmas as well, with your friends, with your family.
Totally. And if you think about when someone said to you, I'm not going to come out for dinner because I'm, saving up something, or I'm not able to afford it this month, how you felt towards them. I've always just felt really compassionate and like, okay, I completely understand. And often, willing to kind of compromise and suggest an alternative that is better for them. So, don't suffer on your own with these worries. Your friends and family want the best for you, and, you're a team. So allow them in with these issues if you feel able to.
Such a good point. I think we've covered pretty much most of them, and I do want to be mindful of time. So let's wrap up our Christmas questions with this one. What are your top 3 tips for managing our mental health over the Christmas period?
Okay, well, the first one I'd say is to try and let go of any high perfectionist standards around what Christmas should be, because we all have these traditions around what Christmas would look like. We can hold ourselves very accountable for meeting these, but traditions are basically rules for how things should be, and we can choose to change those rules or break them. There's no Christmas police. And when we create our own traditions that suit us better, as we are now adults in this situation, we're much more likely to enjoy our Christmas. So what is underneath your perfectionist standards? Are they traditions that you can modify or update to better suit you and your family and friends right now? The second one I'd say is to try and take some time before the festive chaos. Maybe chaos is an unkind word, but it can feel a little bit like that when there's suddenly lots happening. So just take some time before everything gets busy, if it's not too late, to think about, if you get to the end of the Christmas period and it's been a good one, what kind of would that have looked like? How would you have spent your time? Who would you have been with? How would you have turned up to those moments with those people? Would it also include time on your own, and what will that look like? I know I keep coming back to this idea, but I think the biggest problem we have is we never take any time to reflect and plan. We tend to just go from one thing to another because our world is so busy, and there's so much being asked of us all the time, and we're on tap with our phones and emails all the time. So I just think space for yourself can really help. And my final thought was to pace yourself. So less is more. I think the biggest problem a lot of us struggle with is that we are overloaded with options, and we see other people doing fun things, and there are lots of potential things we could see at the cinema, at the theatre, new pubs opening. Like, there's so many things that actually the best skill we can practice is to pause before we agree to doing something and working out what your motivation is. Is it something you really want to do because you're going to see something that's really meaningful to you, or is your motivation more from a negative place of fear of missing out, so that you can kind of use some calming skills to manage that fear of missing out kind of feeling, and focus your energy on the things that will fill you up and are motivated from a positive place.
This has been so helpful. Thank you, Dr. Claire Plumbly. I can't let you go, though, until we do our signature sign-off, which is the Happier Life Project's last 5 in 5. So these are the same 5 questions that we ask every guest on the new series of the podcast. Okay, are you ready?
Sure.
Let's do this. When and where are you at your happiest?
I think just hanging out with my family, with my kids and my husband. When we're, say, eating dinner and I'm hearing what my kids been up to when I'm not there with them. So at school, I love to hear their opinions and hearing how they're kind of developing. And obviously it doesn't always stay lovely. There'll be arguments at the table too. But I think that it doesn't always fill me up.
What's your favourite thing to do that nourishes your mental health?
So my husband and I, ever since the kids were really little, have always been really good at just taking time out, like days out for ourselves, date days. And what I really love about this is that we bond much more deeply, because a lot of evenings when we kind of are tired and put the kids to bed and done dinner and everything, we just have time and energy for the life admin chat. And when we actually take the time to spend time together, we kind of get past the admin chat and we connect a lot more deeply again. And I'm hearing, what his aspirations are or thoughts are about much more interesting issues and podcasts he's listened to and had an insight on. And I'm like, okay, this is us again. I think I certainly find in my therapy work that a lot of people feel very guilty for taking time away from their, family and work. But I think of it almost like a team building day, because we are a team. And if you have that time, it's like the foundations of the family that are staying strong. So, yeah.
What piece of advice do you now know that you wished somebody would have told you earlier that would have made you a happier person?
To remember that nobody's paying as much attention to you as you think they are. That sounds a bit negative, but I think I've often worried as, growing up, that everyone's like looking and judging me and thinking things about me that they probably just weren't. Lots of people just in their own worlds, living their own lives and, just wanting good things for themselves and not really paying that much attention. So I think, that allows you the space to make mistakes and just give things a go and make yourself vulnerable without fearing that people are going to reject you or think badly or watching you every move.
What is the most important one thing that needs to change to make the world a happier place?
I would really love it if all leaders and decision makers, so at every level, but particularly in government, had to do compassion training before taking any of these kind of leadership roles, so that their decision making was coming from a place that was informed by compassion.
Love that. And finally, what is a simple, actionable first step we can take when it comes to getting through the festive period that will help us on our mission to building a happier life?
I'm sorry if it's boring, but I'm going to say the same answer I've said again, because I just think repetition doesn't hurt.
Yeah, go for it.
Take 10 minutes after this podcast, for example, today, before you forget, to sit and think about the upcoming festive period and think about previous festive periods that have gone well and what it was about the ingredients in that felt good, so that you can make sure you're dropping those ingredients into this festive period.
Fab. Okay, more on you. How can we find you? You've got a website. It's drclaireplumbly.com with a silent B.
Yes, and no E. Plumbly.
And you're on the gram, instagram.com/Dr. Claire Plumbly, spelled Plumbly.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dr. Claire. Have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you again to Dr. Claire Plumbly, and thank you to you for listening to this episode of the Happier Life Project with me, Gabby Sanderson. Now, a few days after Claire and I recorded, I did get an email that came through to podcast@mypossibleself.com with a question for Dr. Claire. And, because it's the time of year that it is, and because I can tell that this person is really struggling, I sent the question to Dr. Claire, and she was very kind and she answered it for you. You know who you are. Okay, the question is, hello, I have bipolar disorder. 3 months ago, after supporting my mum, she suddenly passed away. I now care for my dad. 2 weeks ago, my emotional support dog suddenly passed away. Last week, my dad's brother passed away. It has been my responsibility to inform everyone, including my dad. Now I have to represent my dad by travelling down south to my uncle's funeral. My husband will be with me, but it's a 5-hour train journey to what will be a bleak burial service. How can I safely distance myself from the painful event and manage to represent my dad? I have no option but to go. And this is Dr. Claire's response. I'm so sorry to hear about so many losses in such a short period of time, and the responsibility of the funeral to attend on top of it. The loss of loved ones is incredibly hard, especially while managing your own mental health issues. And it sounds like your dog played a very important role in your life too. Firstly, it's important to remember that this is going to be painful no matter what. Don't be hard on yourself for these feelings. They are natural and we cannot rush through grief. I appreciate that your dog played a significant role in supporting your emotions, so this will be hard. But do you have any other strategies for soothing yourself that you have learnt in the past, such as breathing techniques or soothing items that you can use, such as a special item like a stone or your dog's old toy? Familiar smells or tactile items are good, or a playlist with your favourite songs. Things like this can bring comfort and help to ground us too. Something small you can bring with you and wrap your hand around discreetly in your bag might be good. During the funeral, give yourself permission to step away if things become too overwhelming. Find a quiet space where you can take a few moments to yourself. Your husband will be with you, which is a great source of support. Talk to him about your feelings and let him know what kind of support you'd like from him. And don't hesitate to lean on him when you need to. After the funeral, make sure to take the time for yourself. This could be engaging in activities that you find soothing or therapeutic, or simply allowing yourself time to rest and process your emotions. Grief is very tiring, even without all these extra duties and the long travel you are doing. Dr. Claire. And all I would like to add is, if you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. For those of you who are listening on one of our podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download and access all of its content, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, please call your doctor or the emergency services immediately. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the interviewer, which is me, and the interviewees. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for professional or medical advice. The Priory Healthcare are not involved in the production or content of this podcast. If you found this or any of the episodes helpful and you haven't already left us a review, go on, 'tis the season to be generous. And if you're not already following us on social media, we are at My Possible Self and I've been at Radio Gabby. Do take care, look after yourself, and I'll see you on the next one with our mental health PT, Dan Hancock. We're going to talk about a new year, new relationship with exercise. Bye for now.